Jane wore a yellow ribbon around her neck every day. And I mean every day, rain or shine, whether it matched her outfit or not. It annoyed her best friend Johnny after a while. He was her next-door neighbor and had known Jane since she was 3. When he was young, he had barely noticed the yellow ribbon, but now they were in high school together, it bothered him. "Why do you wear that yellow ribbon around your neck, Jane?" He'd ask her every day. But she wouldn't tell him. Still, in spite of this aggravation, Johnny thought she was cute. He asked her to the soda shop for an ice cream sundae. Then he asked her to watch him play in the football game. Then he started seeing her home. And come the spring, he asked her to the dance. Jane always said yes when he asked her out. And she always wore a yellow dress to match the ribbon around her neck. It finally occurred to Johnny that he and Jane were going steady, and he still didn't know why she wore the yellow ribbon around her neck. So he asked her about it yet again, and yet again she did not tell him. "Maybe someday I'll tell you about it," she'd reply. Someday. That answer annoyed Johnny, but he shrugged it off, because Jane was so cute and fun to be with. Well, time flew past, as it has a habit of doing, and one day Johnny proposed to Jane and was accepted. They planned a big wedding, and Jane hinted that she might tell him about the yellow ribbon around her neck on their wedding day. But somehow, what with the preparations and his beautiful bride, and the lovely reception, Johnny never got around to asking Jane about it. And when he did remember, she got a bit teary-eyed, and said, "We are so happy together, what difference does it make?" And Johnny decided she was right. Johnny and Jane raised a family of 4, with the usual ups and downs, laughter and tears. When the golden anniversary rolled around, Johnny once again asked Jane about the yellow ribbon around her neck. It was the first time he brought it up since the week after their wedding. Whenever their children asked him about it, he'd always hushed them, and somehow none of the kids had dared ask their mother. Jane gave Johnny a sad look and said, "Johnny, you've waited this long. You can wait a while longer." And Johnny agreed. It was not until Jane was on her deathbed a year later that Johnny, seeing his last chance slip away, asked Jane one final time about the yellow ribbon she wore around her neck. She shook her head a bit at his persistence, and then said with a sad smile, "Okay, Johnny, you can go ahead and untie it." With shaking hands, Johnny fumbled for the knot and untied the yellow ribbon around his wife's neck. And Jane's head fell off. When Dr. Jim Danger was 18, he and some friends took a road trip to the Apalachicola National Forest near Tallahassee, Florida. Their goal was to get away from people. So, they found themselves driving far into the woods. After they set up camp and had a few drinks, the writer and a friend decide to explore the surrounding forest. They found another trail and started following it, but the further they went, the more apparent it became that someone was living there. Eventually, they came to the campsite of an older man who was living out of his van. His clothes were strung up, coolers were scattered around, and a dog sprawled beside the van. The user and his friend tried to back out without being seen, but the man caught sight of them and called them over. He asked them friendly questions and offered up some places they should check out in the park. After about 10 minutes of talking, they returned to their own campsite. The man was a little strange but seemed perfectly harmless. But, fast forward 2 months, and the Reddit user's friend calls and tells him to turn on the television. There, on screen, was the man they met in the woods that night, on trial for 4 murders. So at my high school, built above the church is a library. Nothing too big, about the size of a basketball court. At the back of the library is a small room for teachers only. A boy goes into the room, closes the door behind him and starts grading for the night. Because of how late it was and the papers he was grading, he eventually nods off and only wakes up because he hears rustling coming from the other room. Thinking it's some students up to no good, he yells, "No one is supposed to be here this late, you guys are going to be in trouble." The rustling stops but the door starts shaking like someone is trying to get in. He yells louder, the door shakes harder. He starts to think that these aren't students and might be something more sinister, so he just starts praying. Eventually the door stops shaking and he gets up and looks through the keyhole to see who was doing all this. As he looks through the hole, he sees the room empty but a shade of red. He falls back and starts praying till the sun comes up. When the sun comes up, he opens the door, runs through the library, down the stairs and out of the church. He runs into the security guard and asks if he saw anything strange last night. The guard says yes. "I saw a demon with red eyes through the window of the library last night, so I didn't go near there. After I heard that, I never used that library the rest of my time there."